So welcome everyone. Welcome back to our monthly Funding Fridays webinar series. Happy Hanukkah. My name is Effie McLaughlin. I am the Interim University Assistant Dean for Research in the Office of Research. And today I'm very excited. We are launching, Dan McCloskey and Chandra Terry are going to talk about this, but we're launching and doing a short demo for a new faculty scholarship data collection tool that Dan spearheaded being created with the collaboration of CIS and various, OIRA, the Office of Institutional Research and assessments, with a number of skilled colleagues, has managed to spearhead putting together this tool for us. Just as a little bit of background, so this Funding Fridays webinar series was launched this past spring by Associate Vice Chancellor for Research, Tamara Snyder, as a way to provide sort of targeted and ongoing support for faculty, specifically directed towards faculty and other research active members of our community during this difficult period when we're feeling alienated and cut off and sort of cut adrift a bit. And this webinar series represents, it's a very welcome collaboration between the office that I represent, which is the Office of Research, and also the Research Foundation Office of Award Pre-Proposal Support, or more fondly known as RF-APPS, which also provides a great deal of pre-award support out of the Office of Research, such as peer review for proposals, if you're looking for peer review services for your proposals. And you can find out more about that too. If you want, we can provide a link. And also the CUNY Office of Library Services. They do a lot of great professional development training and webinars. And if you look at our full schedule, which hopefully you got, there's going to be a few more in the spring about, building your scholarly profile online and getting published and things like that. So the goal of this webinar series is to create a living resource for research development support and information for researchers across the universities at all levels. And all of these webinars were going to be recorded and made available on the Office of Research website. And Dan, if you could just advance, did you put the consent slide on here? Yes. I just want to do a little, this is a verbal consent, but just so you know, this webinar is going to be, it's going to be on, we're going to be recorded as a video. It's going to be on YouTube. We're going to put it on our website as a resource going forward for anyone that wants to find it on our website. So that said, if anyone does not want to be recorded, if you do not want your image, your voice, please turn off your camera and also communicate using the chat. So just as a little bit of a housekeeping before I introduce our speakers. So we're going to try to stick as closely to an hour for this as we can, because we know that all of you have Zoom fatigue and your time is valuable as well. So the presentation is going to run for about 40 to 45 minutes. And we do plan to leave ample time at the end to answer any of your questions. My colleague, Remy Dar, who is the, I'm getting a little bit of feedback. Is that you, Dan?
I don't think so.
Okay, sorry. So my colleague Remy Dar is also going to be helping me moderate this and manage the chat. So please feel free throughout the presentation to type in any questions in the chat at any time, just as they occur to you. We will make every effort at the end to leave ample time to go back and get all of your questions. And then also, certainly, as I said, you are free to reach out to us. We will provide contact information. We will make this presentation available on the website. Reach out to us if you have any questions. And also, if you have any ideas for future webinars about particular professional development or research development topics you would like to see discussed, we can certainly, please reach out to me and we will make every effort to do that. So please allow me to briefly introduce our speakers for today. So Dan McCloskey is an associate professor and chair of the Department of Psychology at the College of Staten Island. His federally funded lab includes high school students, undergrads, master's, and PhD students who study the collective behavior of African naked mole rats and environmental influences on social cognition. In recent years, Dan has served as a sub-program chair. If you could please mute, if everyone could please mute their, because I'm getting some feedback. Oh, great. Thank you. Much better. Thank you. If everyone could please stay on mute, except for our speakers, that would be great. In recent years, Dan has served as the subprogram chair in neuroscience at the Graduate Center, and also where I had the great privilege and pleasure to work with him. He was the University Interim Associate Vice Chancellor for Research for a couple of years, and I think that was sort of what spurred this whole initiative on his part. Chandra Cherry, who also will be presenting today, is the Technology Training Director at the Department of CIS, or Computing and Information Services at Central Office. She's been in the technical training field for many years, and prior to coming to CUNY in 2010, she worked for the New York County District Attorney's Office as a training specialist and a senior support technician. And interesting that she is also an adjunct instructor for the College of Staten Island Student Professional Development Program. So she also has a connection to Staten Island. So welcome. Welcome to all of you. Welcome to Dan and Chandra. And Dan, if you want to take it away, that would be great.
Sure. Thank you so much, Effie. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm really excited to be here. This is a particularly exciting day, and you'll see the reasons why, I think, in a few minutes. It's been a labor of love to kind of pull this together, and I'm hoping to kind of convince you that this is a worthwhile tool for all of you to consider using, that is going to ultimately help your scholarship and help the scholarship of people across CUNY. And I want to thank, first of all, Effie for hosting us today, and ABC Schneider for having the Funding Fridays webinars. I think they're really excellent. This is my third one that I've been involved in, first two watching, and looking forward to seeing more. And also I think that what the Office of Research is doing in terms of co-hosting events like this with the Research Foundation and the Office of Library Services is really a great thing. It's great for all of us faculty to have that sort of merger occurring, because those are three different groups that really can benefit us, and working together is going to be really helpful for our scholarship. So I am going to start by just giving you sort of an overview of CUNY research. Some things that I sort of learned in my 13 years as faculty here, but also during 2 of those years working in the Office of Research at CUNY Central. And I am going to take maybe 10 or so slides to kind of give you an overview of what CUNY research is and how we figure out what it is, how it's measured, and then try to convince you that this new tool that we developed is going to take us to the next level of being able to collaborate with one another, and sort of just have a complete system where we can kind of share our accomplishments with one another. So this graph on the left is very discipline centered around neuroscience. It's a graph that I made for a proposal for the neuroscience researchers that we submitted in a grant a few years ago. But I like it because it reminds me of the sort of interconnectivity of all of our campuses. So one of the things that happens to me at the College of Staten Island, and I'm sure happens to many of us at different campuses, is that we become very campus centric. But CUNY has a very power in numbers system that allows us to benefit from utilizing CUNY when it serves us well. And so when you think about just want to move this over, we have the highest density of researchers, of active researchers, probably anywhere in the world. We have 5,000 research active faculty within a 12-mile radius. And I did the calculation this morning. We are 0.66% of the United States full-time faculty, and we're in 0.01% of the US area. So we are a high density of research active faculty within the New York City area. I can be at the lab or office after COVID within an hour of any of my colleagues across CUNY in any discipline. And there's no other university in the world that I think can boast that. And I think we need to, from physical space, which is a real advantage, I think we have to get closer in our intellectual space too, thinking about how we can better share with one another. And I'll give you some examples of how it's been sort of frustrating for me as a faculty member over the past 13 years in ways that I think that we can improve it. We have a lot of research space. We account for 20% of the research space in New York City. We produce 1% of the scholarly publications And we bring in about 0.25% of research expenditures in the United States. So in that way, we're sort of punching above our weight, right? That we're outperforming in terms of the resources that we have. And I think any faculty member at CUNY would appreciate that and recognize that we're often doing more than what we have in terms of resources. And we are, one of our sort of major things that we do well is, sorry, this is why I should have shared my, bear with me guys. You're not on PowerPoint anymore, right? Let me stop my show and then go back into PowerPoint. Sorry guys.
Boom.
Good?
Thank you. Yeah, that's good.
Okay, so we produce more Nobel laureates than any other public institution on the East Coast, and we're considered a top 50 Nobel laureate producing institution. So training students, training the next generation of researchers is a real skill. And we have many students that come from, from associate degree programs at community colleges, all the way through to PhD programs and medical school that can walk down the hall into a laboratory of a faculty member and start working and get exposure to some of the greatest researchers in the world. And it's really remarkable that what we were able to accomplish in that way. So one of the things that I did a lot of, so when you put a data scientist in an office of research, I default to the things that I know best, which is sort of just collecting data and monitoring data. So I spent a lot of time in my role as interim associate vice chancellor for research, sort of looking at the data, trying to understand what CUNY was in terms of what we do, what do we produce. One of the things that sort of struck me right away is that we don't have a lot of data. And so I needed to kind of find ways to gather data and figure out what I can look at. This line graph here shows the publication record of CUNY. So dating back to 1871, which is the earliest publication by a CUNY faculty member, by Professor Lowe, looking at derivatives of albumin in the Journal of Practical Chemistry, all the way through to, I think this graph goes up to 2019, and looks at the trend of publications. As a faculty, CUNY produces somewhere around 3,000 to 4,000 peer-reviewed publications per year. And that's across all of the disciplines that you see in the pie chart on the left. Psychology, my host discipline, is right up in front, and I'm very proud of that. But as you can see, it's a really a versatile chart that we have many faculty from many different disciplines that are contributing equally to the scholarship that CUNY produces as a faculty. There are really remarkable things. These are publications that came out from CUNY faculty this week, and I think it's fun. I still do this from time to time, even though I left the central office, just kind of pull up what recent publications by CUNY faculty are, just to see, because the diversity is remarkable. You always learn new words too, like non-smooth convex optimization. That's a good word. I'm going to try to incorporate non-smooth into my lexicon now. We've got things about volcanism. We've got computer modeling, we've got all sorts of things, physics, spatial panel data models. I mean, and these are just 10 of the 50 or so publications that were produced by CUNY faculty just this week. So when you look at the productivity of CUNY, it is really a remarkable thing. And it's something that's hard to manage and see what we're doing. And I'm going to try to convince you why that's important for all of us to do. One of the first things that I think is important is branding CUNY research. As faculty member, before I came to the College of Staten Island, I had only heard of the college maybe a couple of years before. And I think we fall into this routine of, with the exception of maybe colleges that have been around for some time, like Hunter and City and Brooklyn, expecting that other people out in the world understand who we are and where we come from. We have a real problem with branding, I think, that, when I remember as Associate Vice Chancellor for Research, as Interim Associate Vice Chancellor for Research, going down to talk to an NSF program officer and a director of a particular institute and kind of making a case for CUNY. and tried to describe to them what CUNY was in terms of, you know, we think that CUNY is such a big institution that people around the world understand it, but this particular director didn't have a good understanding of what CUNY was. And I remember talking to this person for maybe 5 or 6 minutes about CUNY, and then they say, oh, you mean like Hunter College? And I say, yes, like Hunter College, you know, and then they understand, but a lot of the colleges don't have that level of name recognition. When we include CUNY as part of our affiliation on grants and on publications, you know, so rather than writing just Brooklyn College, writing Brooklyn College in the City University of New York, that helps with our research identity. It helps us to brand ourselves as a university, right? So that everybody understands that we're part of this one whole system. And again, there are advantages to that. So when you submit grant proposals, you know, submitting them as a CUNY faculty member carries a little bit more weight, because whether people are familiar with your institution or not, people are more likely to be familiar with CUNY as a whole. And we can always celebrate the CUNY mission, which developed in 1847, around that time, about educating the children of the whole people. And that's what we have always done as a university. The other thing that I've been doing recently, and I'm happy to share this with you, I meant to copy and paste it in the chat, is to include CUNY in my facility statements, one of my grant proposals. So when I start a grant proposal and write my facilities, you know, of course I include things about my lab and the research facilities that I have right around me, but I always start at CUNY. I talk about the College of Staten Island and how it fits within the CUNY system, and then talk about how large CUNY is and the senior colleges and the most racially and ethnically diverse university system in the country, if not the world, and the remarkable diversity that we have here at CUNY that really no one else can talk about. You know, this is what our strength is, that we are educating the children of the whole people, and that we need to kind of let people know that, and that we do a good job of it, that we promote students from lower tiers of social economic status to the upper tiers of social economic status more than any other institution, including all of the Ivies plus Stanford and Duke and MIT combined. So we do more of that than anybody else. So, you know, again, I'm happy to share. Effie, I think, helped me craft some of this. I'm happy to share it, you know, because I included it in all my grant proposals, and I think every CUNY faculty should. So again, that we are kind of reinforcing with our reviewers then when they look at our grants, oh yeah, okay, they're part of this CUNY system. Now I understand how this works. The other thing that I think is good for branding the CUNY research ecosystem is to go beyond your campus. So again, we become very campus focused, and a lot of our day-to-day activities about teaching and staying within campuses. Some of us have ties at the Graduate Center, but often we can reach out across different institutions. Oh, Tim is right there in my feed, good. So Tim is a great example of this, and Tim, I think, is the director of the CUNY Astro, which is CUNY Astronomy and Astrophysics. And everywhere I go and I talk to people about CUNY within CUNY, I say, you guys have to follow what CUNY Astro is doing. It is a sort of grassroots organization that came up from faculty, finding faculty at other campuses. I don't think there are any astrophysics departments. There are many physics departments with astronomers across CUNY. And so they're a very coordinated group. They write grants together, they publish together. When they see a search in a physics department or a mathematics department somewhere in CUNY, they will reach out to the chair and say, hey, you should consider an astrophysicist, and here's why. And so they have a really good organizational structure. And it's what works in CUNY. Having this sort of collaboration that reaches across institutions really seems to work. And they do it better than anybody that I've seen. So congrats to Tim and to the other astrophysicists that do a really good job of this. So that's great, right? So we want to find people at CUNY that do things that are similar to us or that do complementary things. But how do we find out who is at CUNY? Who are the people that we should be talking to collaborate with? And so this came up really quickly in my tenure as an interim associate vice chancellor for research. I think maybe 1 or 2 weeks on the job. And I got one of those calls that I was told I would get, where the chancellor's office is interested, you know, there's a trustee or somebody visiting, and they needed to know who's doing Dominican studies research at CUNY. And I did what any good research administrator without any tools does. I went to Google and just Googled CUNY Dominican studies. And the other thing I did was ask the excellent staff. So people like Effie and Remy, and people who work in the Office of Research and have been around for a while really know what we do. Even before we know who they know who we are and what we do. So it's a real credit that, that they're really skilled at understanding the research ecosystem of CUNY, and I give them a lot of credit. So the first thing I really would do is ask those people and say, hey, do you guys know anybody who's doing Dominican research at CUNY? And they would, of course, rattle off something like the Dominican Studies Institute at City College. But the tools that we had to find other things, things that weren't as, quantum computing came up, blockchain, these sorts of things come up all the time. And we needed to figure out who the faculty were. And we don't really have good tools other than Google to find those. And so, so I started to look around at what we do have. And I thought about something that these emails that I would get every year from my chair as faculty member about uploading the faculty scholarship spreadsheet, right? So some of us do this through Excel. On my campus, it's just an Excel spreadsheet that kind of floats around my department, and we all add our things to it. We would be adding in March 2018 all of our data from the calendar year of 2017, put it into Excel, and then it just kind of disappears. And then more often than not, when I get these urgent emails and it's the middle of March and I have spring break or midterms to grade or something like that, there's a real nice option of just saying nothing to report or something like that. And a lot of those years, even when I had done very good scholarship, it was just easier for me to put nothing to report. Why? Because this is a bean counting exercise for CUNY, has nothing to do with me. Good luck to the administrators, you guys can figure it out, right? In reality though, the data are really useful. So what are the data used for? So this data collection process has been going on by Mark Casaza in the Office of Institutional Research and Assessment, OIRA, at CUNY Central since 2009. And they've been collecting everything that we've put into those spreadsheets. So they actually do go somewhere. CUNY has a massive database of 20,000 of these events or things that we upload every year. So each year, CUNY faculty produce 20,000 original pieces of work. And part of where that goes is into something called the PMP, which is the performance management process, which is how CUNY looks at the different campuses to see what they're doing. So maybe your campus is teaching fewer courses, but your research productivity is higher. So these are metrics that get compared across all different institutions. And generally, every year, CUNY faculty, these numbers are in terms of full-time faculty. So generally, every year, every full-time faculty member puts out one new piece of scholarship. That's the average across all faculty. And of course, some of those faculty are not research active and some are. So this is why the balance comes out to be one. And when you look at the data and what it is, I'm sure everyone here has contributed to this in some way. There are different types of data that we can upload. And this is an example on the left. This table is each 1 year's worth of data, right? So as I mentioned, there's about 20,000 new instances that that CUNY as a whole uploads every year. And by far every year, our highest number of original works is in conference presentations, followed by peer-reviewed journal articles, and then lectures, and then you can just go down the list. And it's remarkable to see all the different work types. And what's important about this is that some of these work types are accessible. So like when I drafted that line plot of all of the CUNY publications since 1871, there are databases. I use Microsoft Academic Search to get that, or you can use Google Scholar to get the information about CUNY. But things like a curated art show, there aren't really good databases for these sorts of things. So we don't have public repositories of all the things that CUNY faculty do in their scholarly and creative work. So we need to find a way to continue collecting this data so that everything gets counted and at least we understand what CUNY is doing, right? So this on the right is a word cloud, and one of my favorite things to do is make these word clouds and just kind of look at what these are from 10 years worth of titles of peer-reviewed publications by CUNY authors, and show you that things like social and health and learning and education are big themes that kind of reemerge. The bigger the word, the more often it comes up in these titles. And so it teaches us about what the CUNY productivity scholarship looks like, at least in the published space. So when we get the PMP scholarly data, when it goes to OIRA, it's very good for what they do. They need it to be able to count things and compare counts of things, but it does have problems. One is that the data can be up to 16 months old. So for example, in our most recent one, which was collected in March through June of 2020, I haven't seen it yet, but I'm sure that there's no mention of COVID research, nothing like coronavirus, because it only went through to December 2019. So maybe a few faculty at CUNY were thinking about it, but I just searched this morning, and since December, or at least since January 2020, we have over 100 publications, 93 that have COVID in the title, a few more that have coronavirus. So CUNY faculty have been very active in publishing in the COVID space. But if we look at the PMP collected data, we have no way of knowing that. So we need more up-to-date data than what we get in this yearly data collection process. The other thing is that the data are really limited in helping us to determine the research interests of the faculty, right? What we get is this, where we get the year, we get a college, a department, an author, the type of work, and then a citation. So for me to look for Dominican studies, for example, I'd have to search this citation for Dominican and hope that people use the word Dominican in their Dominican studies titles, or otherwise I would have to know everything that they do. But with newer data, when you have digital object identifiers and things like that, there are metadata there that get tagged. So this, even though something doesn't mention Dominican in the title of the abstract, it might be classified as Dominican studies, or there might be a keyword of Dominican studies that we can identify. But the citation is really not that great for us to be able to find those things. And the other thing is that it's hard to determine newsworthy and notable achievements. Again, especially something that happened 16 months ago. If I feel like I've made a big discovery or something like that, yeah, there are channels that I can use, but maybe CUNY is looking to help, looking to write a story on all the astrophysical faculty that are looking at this particular, new phenomenon. Or something else, and they want to know who the right faculty to reach out to are. It's a really difficult thing within, the CUNY ecosystem to find all of the really great faculty that are doing these things. And so these are the data that we spend a lot of time looking at. As I mentioned, 20,000 of these a year for 12 years or so, and there's a lot of it. 120, 130,000 different original data pieces that CUNY faculty have published, and we spend a lot of time looking at what these are and what CUNY is doing, but we definitely recognize that there's a better way, that there's more information that we could be gathering. So I mentioned earlier that today is a really exciting day, and of course it is because I get to present this to you, but it's particularly exciting because 20 minutes before, not an hour before when I checked, but I checked again 20 minutes before our presentation, and I see this new tab in my CUNYfirst. And for somebody who's been thinking about this tab for over 2 years now, it's a very exciting thing. In CUNYfirst now, we all have a scholarly and creative work tab, which is the place where we can enter data that we've been accomplishing in real time, not March accounting for the year before, but something that you're working on today, something that you published yesterday. This is going to give us, it's a first step, but it's going to be an important first step towards having better data to manage for CUNY, for your chairperson, for your deans and your provost, and ultimately we hope for you to be able to kind of coalesce with other faculty across CUNY. I want to acknowledge some really important people who have been working on this with me since 2018. First and foremost, Samaya Arafin and Mark Casaza. Samaya is from CIS, Computational Informational Systems at CUNY, and Mark, as I mentioned, is from OIRA. And the three of us have really kind of been driving this for a couple of years now, with the support of Tamara Schneider and Colin Chelman in OIRA, who have really been supportive of this, and Zeb Jeremias also in CIS. All three of them, those supervisors, have been really supportive in letting us kind of continue this work. And we reached out to a number of different faculty and administrators across CUNY during this whole process. And here's a list of most of those people, but there are more who have given us feedback on this. So this has been a work in progress where people have seen different iterations of this. I've come to appreciate what goes into creating a tab on CUNYfirst. I never realized how many different steps there are and to going to production. And so what Chandra is going to show you in a couple of minutes is something that has, you know, taken the work of all of these people, and I think is a first step towards something that we would all benefit from. But the key is that we have to use it. You know, if we don't use it, or if it becomes nothing more than this this Excel spreadsheet that we do every year, then the reinvestment in it is not going to be there. But I do see opportunity for it. So the CUNYfirst really, as might be what you're thinking, and the answer is yes. So there's advantages to using CUNYfirst. I have a misspelling there. This is a homegrown and therefore customizable solution. So we did talk to different third-party solutions, people who do this for a living, but they scrape our data. We don't have an opportunity as faculty to curate it ourselves, and they own the data. So this is a more powerful thing for us. And we all know CUNYfirst is something that we use regularly. We think we associate it with grading and textbooks and all of that other stuff, but we all know how to use it. We all have access to it. So the 7,000 full-time and 14,000 part-time faculty all at CUNY who are publishing and doing work all have access to CUNYfirst. So what are the potential future directions? Again, I think buy-in is going to be important, that faculty use it and that administrators can rely on us using it. But I do see opportunities. For right now, just as we kind of did before in the Excel spreadsheet, we're going to have to enter things one by one individually. But, you know, we already talked to CIS about potential for integrating with other tools like bib formats or ORCID or Google Scholar or Interfolio, some of the things that you might be using elsewhere that can read in lots of your stuff. We're also working on back populating things that you've done. So, you know, if you're eager and already sort of entering this in CUNYfirst right now, I would keep with the newer stuff, you know, from 2020 on, and see what we can help to do to get you things looking backwards. For the PMP data collection process, which is really why this is here now, it really only matters what's been done since 2020 anyway. We've talked a lot about integration with CUNY Academic Works, so that if you share an article in CUNY Academic Works, that it'll automatically kind of create something in CUNYfirst or vice versa. And so we've been thinking about ways to do that. A way to print a CV potentially, you know, when you are up for a promotion or tenure, that we can press a button and have everybody have a formatted CV in one format that's easy for us to use. And then finally, intranet and public search functionality. So for ourselves, you know, for faculty to be able to find other faculty, but also for news agencies and for industry partners to find us, you know. And so if we can export the data in the correct format, and this link here, I'm going over on my time, so I'm not gonna go to the link, but it's something called Vivo. If we can export into the correct data format, overnight we can launch 1,000 web pages or 7,000 web pages to profile our scholarship. And as you'll see when Chandra gives the demonstration, there's ways that we can curate what gets public and what's not public. For right now, everything's behind CUNYfirst, but eventually we might have the opportunity to put this out publicly so that other people can see it. Okay, so I'm gonna stop there and turn it over to Chandra, who will take us through the tool.
Thank you, Dan. I did want to acknowledge that there's a ton of questions coming in, and we're going to get to them at the end. Dan, you got a lot of questions about the data that you collected and sort of the representativeness of it across disciplines.
Yeah.
And also we've gotten a bunch of questions about, and you addressed this a little bit at the end, but the distinction between what the CUNYfirst tool is going to do and what Academic Works is already doing. And it looks like Meg Wacha, who is our resident expert on Academic Works, is also on this call. So maybe we can address some of those things at the end. But I just wanted to let everyone know that we're following the chat and we hope to get to all your questions. Thank you.
Okay, so shall I get started? And everyone can hear me, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, just got to be sure. All right, so I had to remote in. I'm Chandra Cherry. I am part of the CIS training team. Anastasia Fatih, she's also online with us. So we will definitely make this as simple and collaborative as possible. What I did was I navigated to the faculty center through my self-service. When you first go into CUNYfirst, there is a menu on your splash page, on your landing page, that says Faculty Center, and you just click on that link. It brings you to the same screen that you see here on my screen. So that's the navigation. You click once on that link and here you are. And again, most of us are familiar with this. We go in and we would put in our grades and for the grade roster. And right up here, as Dan mentioned earlier, you have a scholarly and creative work tab. So I'm going to click on mine. And when I click on my scholarly and creative work tab, you're going to see the different job titles I have. Right now, I am looking at just items, of course, that I'm active in. So right here, you'll see that I have an adjunct lecturer title, and I also have the IT technology training director title. I am going to select this one. And right in here, you will see that there's one work item that I have listed, and I'm going to click on view. Now, this is not my work, this is actually Dan, and Dan is going to sort of chime in and basically let us know what some of those fields mean, but I just want you to see what it looks like. So I'm going to click on view.
So Chanda, we're getting a couple requests. This isn't the first one. I think that some people are having problems seeing the text because it's a little small.
How about that?
Is that better? Enlarge your screen a bit.
Yeah, that looks good.
Okay.
So I am in a remote environment, so it's kind of difficult, but if you can see this, is everyone okay with this screen? My navigation may be a little, great. So my navigation may be a little off, but for the most part, I'll go slow. So at the top, your information is going to appear, your IMPL ID, your name, the department you're affiliated with, and your institution. And then when you scroll down, it's going to give you some information about the particular work that you've submitted. Again, this is something that's already been submitted. It hasn't been approved yet, it's just been submitted. Right here, I have a work number and publication and performance date. And right in here, you'll notice that some of the fields will have a little information icon next to it. And if you just hover, it's going to give you a definition for that particular field. And that's pretty good because sometimes you come here, you're not sure what's going to appear. So down here, you'll see that we have a work type, and the work type that's associated with this code is a journal article and peer review. The work title is here as well, and some of your fields, you'll notice that they can actually make them a little bit larger. So just in case you're unable to see all of the text, you do have some flexibility with enlarging certain fields. You cannot make any changes. Once you've submitted an a work, once you've submitted it, you cannot make any changes. So we're going to discuss that in a second because I am going to go in and do one straight. So here is the work citation, and I'm sorry, the work title, and then the citation. When you scroll down, and Dan, if you want to chime in at any moment,
Yep.
please feel free.
Yeah.
Inside here, we have a language code and author type. And again, when we do a brand new one, when we enter in a brand new work item, you'll see all of the fields and what you can choose from. For additional authors and collaborators, you'll notice here that we have faculty as well as students. So you have the opportunity to identify who the collaborators, who the were, and also whether if they were faculty or student.
This is helpful, very helpful, by the way, to see where collaborations are developing across campuses. And so this was an early feature request that we had to kind of identify when people are publishing with students, first of all, and when faculty maybe at different institutions are co-publishing. Thanks, Shonda.
No problem. Coming down, you'll see that we have you have other titles or other fields that have been grayed out. The ones that are active are the ones that were populated. So the journal title, current biology, and then we have a volume, an issue, and the page numbers that were used. Here, I mentioned, someone in the chat mentioned something about notes. I'm not sure if this is what they were referencing. I hope that this does come in helpful, but this is a little helpful or beneficial. So you do have a section for notes, and then you have these questions. Is this work newsworthy? Willing to be a subject matter on? or an expert for media interviews? And also, do you consent to publishing this work in the CUNY website? So you can collect the work in CUNY website, but you don't necessarily have to publish it. Do you want to speak more to that, Dan?
Yeah, thanks,
Okay.
thanks, Chandra. So yeah, the notes was another early feature that we really wanted to make sure we had, because we heard from people who had been doing this PMP process. I'm an architect, but there's no place for me to put drawings, architectural drawings. So we recognize that there are many different types of works that you count towards your scholarly and creative activity. And the notes is this, free-form field that we can use for you to kind of communicate to, your chair or somebody else what exactly the work is. But also, I just put a note here about, some some bragging, I guess, about media attention or whatever. But it might be useful for my chair to see that and see what's been going on. And then finally, the newsworthiness is a feature request from the CUNY Communications office. Somebody reached out to me and said, "Hey, Dan, how can we figure out which faculty are doing Dominican studies work or whatever? We have a story that we want to do, or we want to get an early notification when a faculty is doing something really interesting as a new publication or a new grant." And we didn't even talk about grants. We'll talk about grants next. That is newsworthy. Now, it's, we're going to tend to think that our things that we do are newsworthy. So it's going to be interesting to see how this gets used. But this allows them to kind of scroll down and say, okay, well, look at all these things that are newsworthy that have been put out recently, and can kind of pick and choose. Their media attention to us really benefits, right? It's a really good thing that when they're calling attention, it promotes CUNY as a whole, as an institution. It really has this force multiplier for us. And then finally, the content and publishing the work in the CUNY website is, if and when this does go live and public facing, you have the right to say, I don't want this to be out in the public, or I do want this to be out in the public. And you may choose no for everything. You may not choose to have a public profile, and that's perfectly acceptable too. But again, to have somebody out in the world find you through sort of this website that all you have to do is put in this information, I think could be a good thing.
Okay, and the last part down here, we have keywords, and you also have identifiers. So the identifier, is that where you would put in a...
That would be this. In this case, this is a digital object identifier. So Perfect. This is a website that directly will feed, and that's very helpful, because that's where we can get a lot of metadata. We can pull the digital object identifier and figure out what your field of study is, or pull your abstract, or whatever it is from your paper.
Down here at the bottom, you have the ability to also insert file attachments. So you'll notice here we have the PDF, and if you click on view, it will actually open up and you can actually view the article as the PDF that was attached.
And I saw
so I'm going to, go ahead.
Sorry, Chandra. So I saw somebody in the chat asked about sort of public and copyright and things like that. All of the things that we upload to this will be internal only, so they're not public facing. So again, if your work is a sculpture, now you can include a picture of the sculpture so that people can see it, or something like that.
Okay, great. Okay, and what I'm going to do, because we are running short on time, I am going to just sort of travel back here. I want to add another publication, but I want to start it from the beginning. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to click on Faculty Center. Let's see if we can go back. I'm just going to go right in here to scholarly and creative work. Again, just making sure we all start at the same place. And I want to select the adjunct lecturer. And if I look down here underneath that item that I have submitted already, I should see that button, Add Scholarly and Creative Work. When I click here, now you'll notice that my work number is increased to 2, thankfully. And now I'm going to start populating the information here. So Dan, I'm just going to go in, and if you want to walk through some of those fields. So I have my little notes here so I can just grab it.
Yeah, so you know, the date is important, because that's what bases the PMP, and the date would be, you know, either the date of publication or the day that, in this case, this is a grant proposal submission. And so the date, it would be the grant proposal submission.
And that would be, I think, 06/24/2020, I think. I think that's what you had before.
Yes,
I'm not sure.
Right.
Okay. All right, great. So here we get to sort of click on the lookup tool. So now I'm just going to click here so we can see. Before we just saw author, but here you can see some of the work types, correct?
Yes, and
Okay, great.
grants, received grants and submitted grants, these are all new fields that we did not have before. So normally this data was collected by RF, but each campus did, like things like submitted grants, for example, each campus would have done differently. One of the first kind of meetings I had with the grants officers, I asked, what's our grant success rate at CUNY? And nobody had an answer to that. Now we can start to get at those questions to see whether, which grants are we getting or not getting, and it's going to be very powerful information.
So for work title, again, I am just typing in what Dan already kindly and generously did for me, and I'm going to click on the citation. Go right ahead.
So you'll notice that the ones that Chandra's putting in now are all starred, which means that they're required. And all of those are directly related to what you've been putting in since 2009 into the PMP. So those are the only ones that are actually required, is to maintain the information that we've been getting since 2009 with the citation, the work type, the work title, and all of that. But obviously these other fields are here, and we're hoping that you use them, because the richer the information is, the better it will be for everybody.
Okay.
And Dan, you can go in and edit these entries at any time. So somebody asked a question. So if you say it's a submitted grant, if they get it, then they can say it's been an awarded grant. Yeah,
you can go, once you submit it, it goes to your chair or a dean, and they would have to return it to you in some cases for you to edit it. But if it's saved and not submitted, so maybe what I would do with my grant proposal would be to save it after I do it. And then, once I find out whether it's funded or not, either update it or then submit it.
So I will demonstrate that real quick. You got it. So I will put in the rest of the information right now. And I chose author as the role in English and the notes. And because there were no other additional collaborators, we don't have to fill that information up here, correct? Because it's just you.
That's right.
Okay, great. All right. And here's where you actually made some decisions that were different than the journal entry. So here you said, is this work newsworthy?
Right.
There was a no. And willing to be the subject matter, you said yes, but do you consent to publishing? You said no.
That's right. I would, a proposal I wouldn't publish. If I got the grant, I might consider making it public, but probably not, because, I think the public part, I could imagine for works of art and public facing things like publications, but not necessarily grants.
Okay.
And so if you click yes to the subject matter, then what it will do is pull the keywords. So that those two sort of go hand in hand.
Great.
That's what I'm saying. I'm willing to be a subject matter expert in.
Perfect.
And then, of course, I didn't give you an attachment for this, but you could upload the proposal itself. I have my summary statements from my reviewers that maybe a chair would want to look at, or I could share with another faculty member and they want to give feedback or something.
So here is where we would click on save. So once I click on save, actually, let me just demonstrate something really quickly. I'm going to click on submit. Let's say I am just overly confident that I did everything correctly. I'm going to click on submit. What it's going to do is just caution you. It's going to let you know that once you click, you will no longer be able to edit. And that's why I clicked on cancel and I go right into save. And now when I click on save, I actually have saved what I've done. And now when I come back to, once I return to my faculty center, if you don't mind, I'm just going to show you up here where it says approval status, it says in progress. If I click that down arrow, you're going to see the different status options here. Let's see. Maybe it won't until I go in. Let's see. I'm going to click here on my scholarly. Okay, great. And I'm going to select lecturer. And now if you look here, you'll notice that my journal has a submitted and view. However, my grant is in progress, and I also have the ability to view, but also edit. So now I can return to that grant work and then make those changes.
Right. And, you know, again, if you wanted to edit, you would ask your chair to release it, return it to you, or you could just simply delete it and put a new one in if you had an error or something like that.
Right. So I'm just going to hit save again. Nothing will happen. It's detrimental. And then I can go back to my list of scholarly works.
Yeah, I see some questions here about back populating, like stuff that you've already submitted in a few different iterations, the same question. And, you know, we are working towards getting all of the data that has already been entered into the system. You might see it in some cases in if you log in, that some of it's there already. So, but going back and enriching the data with more than just the citation, because remember, all you're going to see is the citation, the year, and things like that. But going back and enriching it would be helpful for you, and you know, getting keywords in there and things like that. And people are asking about specific types of music composition and video. My understanding, and I think Mark or Samaya might be able to help answer this better, is that I think that I don't think there's a restriction in the file format as far as I understand it.
Okay.
Do you want me to just jump into the chat and start asking you some questions that came up as we went along? Okay, I'm going to go back to the beginning. There were just some questions in the beginning, Dan, about I believe your pie charts, your original data collection, that it didn't seem to be representative, and
always questions about the pie chart.
One person wanted to know about nursing. One person wanted to know about business aviation. There were a lot of questions about humanities, about why arts humanities weren't included in your pie chart. Can you just address that?
I have to stop including it because these questions always arise. The way that the pie chart is developed is I pulled 10 years worth of data from Microsoft Academic Search. And in those data points, the DOIs has a field. It has a F, it's called f.fn, and that is the field. And then I pull that field for those, you know, 100,000, 200,000 articles or whatever it is, and count how many times. And that's the pie chart I get. And you know, it could be that certain naming conventions could be different for different disciplines. And when we have a pie chart like that, all it is for sort of interesting information. And it's not like, oh, here's how we're going to slice up the money for CUNY because this is a publication. Because we recognize clearly not everybody is using the same format of journal. Not everybody has the same, you know, naming conventions. It's one of the real tricky things across different disciplines. But that's the way it's derived. It's derived from a field function from the metadata that's included with peer-reviewed published journals. And, you know, somebody showed me and said, where's engineering? And I said, good question. I don't know where engineering is. And, you know, so it causes more, more consternation than it's worth probably, but it's interesting to look at.
There was also, just quickly, there was a question about, you'd suggested about our branding of CUNY and how you'd said Brooklyn College in the City University of New York, and a few people had said that they have different naming conventions they use. And also, I mean, I do believe, I mean, I've generally heard Brooklyn College of the City University of New York, which came up, so of rather than in.
I struggled with that back and forth, and I wasn't sure, and I meant to search it, and I didn't.
And I don't know, this might even be a question for, you know, ABC Schneider or somebody, but some people say that they're using, you know, CUNY Home College, or they just include CUNY in the Graduate School of Public Health. So I don't know. I mean, I do know that when submitting grant applications through the Research Foundation, you have to say, you know, the Research Foundation representing, you know, Queens College of the City University of New York. So I don't know. I mean, I know that there's different naming ways that people put the name. I mean, I probably would be inclined to sleeve of the City University of New York rather than the other modalities. Because I don't know. I don't know if everybody knows what CUNY is, as Tim seemed to suggest. So anyway, I don't know if you have any
I
thoughts.
agree. And the way that I thought about it is almost, and I defer to Tamara on this, of course, but the way that I thought about it is that it doesn't, as long as the words are in there, people will make the connection. That's the way I thought, and the way I learned about this was by doing those searches. So if like the search that I did to find what's been published this week, I have to list all 25 of our institutions plus CUNY plus
Right.
some other permutations of it, just to make sure I'm getting everything, and so if we can't figure it out, then nobody else is. And I agree that having some standard naming convention would be really, really helpful. But I think for now, as long as the City University of New York is somewhere in your affiliation, it would be very helpful.
And we also had a ton of questions. I mean, we got a lot of questions, and I'll save them, but there was a lot of questions about, and I don't know if Meg, if you're on the call, if you want to maybe unmute yourself, but sort of what is the difference between CUNY academic works and how we post, the sort of scholarship that's captured by that versus the scholarship that's captured by this, and whether it's just an abstract versus whole text, and maybe better ways that this tool can work with, or sort of the intersection between this tool and academic works. And I don't know if you have thoughts about that, Dan, or if, Meg, if you want to say a couple words.
I'm happy to chime in here. So first off, thank you, Dan, so much for sharing this new tool. I'm excited to see it and to learn about it today. So CUNY Academic Works really comes out of a resolution and statement on open access by the University Faculty Senate. And I mentioned that just to say that it comes out of the UFS and was built by the libraries in service to that. And its primary purpose is through faculty self-submission, so faculty who choose to share their work publicly. And we make faculty research in all of its forms, creative works, as well as open educational resources available for free online to anyone with an internet connection in service to CUNY's mission. Again, this is the first time I'm seeing this tool here. My understanding it's much more tied to the PMP process, and as such is really focused on creating, collecting a lot of the citation information. I think there are a lot of ways that we might collaborate in these initiatives. Libraries have great experience in these areas, and so I look forward to figuring out ways that we can do so.
Yeah, I think, having an integration would be fantastic. And there's a few different ways that I could imagine, but again, it's early for that. I think, again, if we use it, then we will find a way to link these two up, because I think it is useful, and a lot of faculty have asked about it. It would be really beneficial.
So there's a question about, so again, maybe sort of reiterating sort of how this ties into the PMP process too, because John Drobnicki asked, so this is to report your scholarship to CUNY like we used to do once a year via the CUNY portal, just reporting citations. So maybe if you could talk a little bit about, how this is linked to the PMP process, sort of the discussion you've been having with administrators as well as individual faculty in terms of, and also there were some questions about, what you had already mentioned, sort of the populating the stuff the things that the citations from earlier in their career to get on this.
So for now, our goal is to get 2020 information up there for the 2020 PMP, which will be next spring. And that's why we wanted to make sure we got it up in the fall semester, give faculty enough time to learn about it and use it. But yes, this is replacing the CUNY portal approach. It's replacing on my campus and some other campuses the passing around of Excel spreadsheets instead of CUNY portal, to have an all-in-one place, thing. And as I mentioned, the backlog data, the data that Mark has since 2009, our goal is to get it into this system so that you can look back and see your data from previous years. And that's why, again, it wouldn't be good for you to go and start populating all of that old stuff yet, because you might just want to edit if we were able to do that. So I think for the next few months, you know, continue staying on top of it and remembering about it and using it is a good thing. I did get an update from Samaya, thanks Samaya, on the file extensions that you can do. So no video, no music at this point. PDFs, text, doc, you know, Word docs, JPEGs, and bitmaps, BMPs. So images and PDFs and documents at this time. But you know, even that is I think a major step forward from what we had, which is just a citation. You know, we've come a long way from what kinds of data we've been having, and I think this is going to open doors for a lot of us. Yeah, so somebody's asking about Brooklyn College. We've been talking to a few of the campuses. You know, if you're using Interfolio or some of these other systems, the best thing to do is just consult with your chair, your dean, and see what they want you to do. Some are going to use this system first and then fill in that other system from here, and some vice versa. Nobody wants you to duplicate your effort and do this twice. So that the goal would be to just have you do it once, and preferably wherever it's easier for you to do it, and then it goes into the other place.
Effie, you're muted.
One person had a question is if there will be a CUNY-wide training. I mean, Chandra, I mean, as I said, this webinar itself with all the training materials will be available on the Office of Research website. However, I wonder, do you have any plans, Chandra, for sort of an ongoing training for using this tool in CUNYfirst?
This is the first we're hearing about desired training. We will definitely consider it. So if our faculty members need and want, yeah, we'll definitely look into it and put it in our rotation.
So it is, sorry.
Tammy Lewis is asking about a short step-by-step guide. Chandra and her team did create that. So we do have a PDF that takes you through the process of putting in the information.
Yeah, and I will definitely, we'll put it on our website. I can also send it to all the people that are registered for this webinar if you'd like us to do that. AVC Schneider had it is 1:03. We're trying to keep to the hour-long deadline. One thing that we can do, which I think is a great idea that AVC Schneider had, is that Zoom does save all these questions, so we can create an FAQ and also put it on the website if that would help you. But again, there seems to be a lot of questions about if this is going to replace the PMP. I mean, I think it's sort of the administrative type questions about how we're going to start using this system and sort of, but again, it's just being launched today. So I guess we'll partly just have to see you know, who's going to start using it and you know, the adaptability. So Dan, do you have would you like to have any final parting comments?
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you so much, Shannon.
We're really excited about this, and there's a lot of opportunity here. So I hope you find it very useful.
Yeah, go check out your CUNYfirst profile today. And as I said, we will make every effort to include all your questions on an FAQ, and all the materials will be on our website probably within a week or so, and I will send you an email letting you know when those are all live. So thank you.
Just a quick thanks to Dan and Effie and Chandra. This is a great tool, a great rolling out process. It's really going to help CUNY scholarship, all of CUNY scholarship. So thank you all so much. Appreciate your talents and your efforts here.
And happy holidays, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. See you at the next Funding Fridays.